Okay, we are live now.
All right, very good. Thank you, Alessandra, and welcome to this webinar titled GRAS Made Simple, Navigating FDA Ingredient Safety. So today it'll be myself and as well as Lane Highbarger. So what to expect in today's discussion, we'll be doing a short introduction about GRAS, a little bit of historical background, and then we'll jump into the framework of GRAS, followed by some updates, some potential changes, which I'm sure some or many of you have been hearing about, and then some best practices as well in preparing for potentially these changes, or just if this is the first time you're looking to submit GRAS and you've never gone through this roller coaster of a ride of submitting a GRAS dossier or preparing a self-affirmation GRAS, there'll be some best practices that we'll talk about. That'll be followed by a fireside chat, which will be some insights, mostly from Lane, but I'll be asking some questions, whatnot. And then after that, hopefully time will permit, we will jump into a live Q&A. So let's jump into it. So just a little bit of background about our company, Quality Smart Solutions here. It was founded in 2007. I'm the president, CEO, and founder of Quality Smart Solutions. We've served over 3,500 clients in that time. We cover a lot of different areas, from food to OTC drugs, and we cover various markets, including the United States, FDA, Canada, which is Health Canada, EFSA in Europe, UK, and Australia. And we cover ingredients as well as finished branded products. So a little bit about us. Myself, like I mentioned, I'm the president and founder of Quality Smart Solutions, and I started this in 2007. And then Lane Highbarger is a ex-FDA. I worked with the agency for 26 years, reviewed many GRAS notices, as well as food additive petitions and color additive petitions during his 26-year tenure there, and also as a FDA subject matter expert in food irradiation. He's also reviewed biotechnology and infant formula submissions. So he has quite a unique perspective in how ingredients are evaluated for their safety. All right, so let's jump into it. A little bit of a background here on the legal foundation on the FD&C Act. So the foundation of the GRAS framework comes directly from the U.S. Federal Food Safety Law. In 1938, the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, known as the FD&C Act, was established, and that gave the FDA broad authority over food safety, including oversight of ingredients added to food. Now let's fast forward to 1958, still a long time ago. Congress introduced the Food Additives Amendment, and this amendment created the modern system for evaluating substances added to food and introduced the concept of food additives requiring pre-market approval. Now, importantly, it also carved out an exemption for substances that are generally recognized as safe, GRAS as we call it today. GRAS substances are considered safe based on scientific evidence or a long history of common use in food, and this determination must be supported by expert consensus. GRAS became an essential alternative pathway to market for ingredients that meet this high level of scientific agreement without needing formal FDA approval, and that's the self-affirmation pathway. So what is GRAS? As I just mentioned, GRAS stands for Generally Recognized as Safe. It applies to food ingredients that were in commerce and in safe use since 1958, or are supported by public scientific evidence and expert agreement confirming their safety under intended conditions of use. So let me give you an example. Say cocoa bean chocolate. Been in commerce since 1958, before 1958, and it's obviously, milled, ground up, becomes chocolate powder, and it's used in confectionaries and various uses in various foods for many uses and many years since then. Now, say if somebody decides to try to make chocolate maybe in a lab, and they use a process, for example, in fermentation to actually lab create cocoa. And this is actually an interesting topic because cocoa has become very expensive, and there are biotechnology companies that are actually exploring this. So this is an actual example. So in this case, this is something novel, way past 1958, and it's now has to go through a GRAS dossier preparation, whether self-affirmation or filing it with FDA as a GRAS notice. So so really, in simple terms, companies trying to determine safety through publicly available data and expert consensus. That's what will determine if the ingredient can be considered GRAS. Now, why does this matter? It's required really for market access and consumer trust. It is law out there that you're supposed to prove that it is GRAS, self-affirmation or FDA. And it supports transparency and compliance with the FDA GRAS program. Another really important piece, and especially those who are watching this and tuning in here, that if you're an ingredient supplier, many buyers today, and we're seeing this trend continue, especially now that the word GRAS is becoming, it's out in the media because of potential changes. Buyers are asking ingredient suppliers, hey, can you prove that it's GRAS? Do you have a GRAS dossier prepared? We won't place a PO unless you have proven that. So that's another, it's an important business tool, I guess you could call it, for you to actually get buyers to purchase your ingredient. So there's two pathways, as I mentioned. There's the self-affirmation GRAS pathway, where you don't actually file it with the FDA. It's exactly the same. There's no difference in terms of preparing that dossier and the evidence, the safety evidence behind it, as though you were submitting it to the FDA. It's identical, right? The only difference is you keep that. And typically, though this is not mandatory, it doesn't say anywhere in the law and the regulations where you have to have an expert panel, but it is often used. And it's an expert panel, typically 3 individuals from industry. There can't be a conflict of interest. In fact, FDA has a guidance document around that. The expert panel reviews it, basically verifies what the consultant or lawyer or maybe the company itself prepared that dossier. So it's a good legal tool in the sense that it validates what was checked initially, or what was prepared initially. Just another set of eyes, 3 sets of eyes typically. The other pathway is the FDA GRAS notice, and so the FDA, submit it online. FDA reviews the data, and will either come back with questions and ask you to amend the dossier, or they will, or if you have to amend it and update it, back to the FDA, and eventually, hopefully, you get to no questions or comments letter. As that's without the FDA saying that's GRAS. They will not say that, just for legal reasons. But there are no questions and no comments, is the indirect way of saying it's GRAS. So the process really involves identifying the ingredient, its intended use, because the intended use could be, is it alcohol beverages? Is it foods? Like what kind of foods? Is it cereal? Is it orange juice? There's so many different pathways that it could be used for. Then secondly, gather and assess all the relevant scientific data. Tox studies, typically there's subchronic studies, 90-day studies, 14-day studies, looking at genotox. Those are typically the battery of studies that are involved in a GRAS dossier to corroborate safety, but there could be others as well. It's also manufacturing data. It's looking at acceptable and estimated dietary intake, looking at NHANES data. There's a lot that really goes into this dossier. So it's prepared. You may submit it to the FDA. Currently, there is that pathway of self-affirmation, which I will talk about where the future of that may end up. And then if you do submit to the FDA, they will review it. Usually the first 90 days is an administrative review. So they're just making sure that you completed the 7 sections of a GRAS dossier, excuse me. And then after that, they will start to get into the meats and potatoes of your dossier and all the data, reviewing it. And that period, that could take a long time. That could take, anywhere from 9 to 12 plus months. And that could be some of that back and forth. They're going to assess it. They have questions. You got to amend it, go back. Could be some back and forth there. And then in the end, the FDA issues a no questions letter, which would, so this is all public data. Once you've submitted it, it'll stay pending as the FDA is reviewing it. It could be, where the positive outcome is the no questions. There could be a situation where you may withdraw it because maybe there's data that you can't supply because the FDA has asked for it, or the FDA may actually ask you to withdraw it and cease reviewing it. So remember, this all stays public. So even if you withdraw it, it is staying public where everyone can see it. And so this is why a lot of companies have taken the self-affirmation pathway. So some of the key requirements for GRAS, very strong scientific evidence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andrew.
Go ahead.
Alexander just allowed me to jump back into this. I'd like to make a point that is, I think, kind of important, which kind of gloms back onto your point about how the government will evaluate these substances. And one of the big things that is cycling through is stevia. Okay, stevia leaf is not permitted to be imported into the U.S. as a food ingredient. Yeah, there are stevia leaf things that are, I guess, dietary ingredients. But what most of the people that are working in the stevia world are trying to, or not trying to, they are generating the sugars that you find good and yet not obnoxious. So anyway, going back, every one of those stevoglycosides that come in the U.S. have a required GRAS notice, which I think cycles back to what you're saying about import. Import is important because if the company can't import a product because it doesn't meet whatever regulation, I'm not going to go deeper than that, they can't. So I'm throwing out the stevoglycoside as a data point. There are many, many, many other products or ingredients that cannot be imported unless they have a GRAS notice from the FDA that has no questions. Okay.
Infant,
stop talking.
Right, infant formula ingredients is another one where it is mandatory.
Absolutely, and most important, yes, and that is an incredibly important point. You cannot add ingredients to infant formula unless they have a GRAS notice. That is a flat out statement.
Yeah. And if you prepare your infant formula submission, and that's part of the questions that they're going to ask. If you don't have that answered, here's the ingredient, here's the GRN number that you're using, your application doesn't go any further. It's dead in the water. So so that's really important.
Yep.
No self-affirmation allowed for infant formula ingredients.
And you need to, I think this is something that needs to be iterated many, many, many times, because so many people want to add stuff to infant formula, but it won't go anywhere unless there's a GRAS affirmation, or I'm sorry, not affirmation, a GRAS no questions letter, period. It won't go any further.
Yeah.
Anyway, again, stop talking.
Thanks, Lane. That was much appreciated for that insight. So just on the key requirements for GRAS, again, strong scientific evidence, publicly available, verifiable data, and, clearly defining its intended use and exposure level. And that's all done in that section where you're doing ADI, EDI calculations, pulling NHANES data, which is public, for now, government funded data. And you're basically, hitting that 95th percentile, and you're going to determine what food groups and intended use that you're going to be using that substance for. Qualified experts, again, that's not mandatory that you have to have it. But if you do, make sure that you're following those rules, guidance that the FDA has outlined, and to ensure there's no conflict of interest. All the documentation has to be well organized. The FDA has laid this out, the 7 sections of a GRAS dossier. If you don't follow that, you're not even going to make it in the first 90 days of the administrative review of your GRAS dossier. You're going to be knocked out and get it fixed and then resubmit it. So, and again, don't forget that self-affirmed is equivalent to the FDA notified GRAS submission. There should be no difference between the two. So again, best practices: plan your evaluation strategy early in the product development process. One of the things we always do at the beginning is a gap assessment. That's a really, really important step, because that'll pave the pathway of how long it's going to take for you to get a GRAS dossier submitted. If there's certain tox studies that are missing, now you got to find a CRO if you don't have one. Prepare the actual study, and then from there conduct the study, and then publish the study. And that could take 6, 9, who knows how many months. And then when that study's completed, preparing the dossier, right? So that it's really a lot of planning that's really important here. We talked about qualified experts as well as an option. Again, it's used in many applications or dossier submissions. So I'd estimate probably well over 75-80% of them. At least if you look on the GRN inventory database, vast majority have them. Again, not mandatory to have it. Keep your records very clear and how the safety was determined. Those are all key best practices. Common mistakes that are made, and Lane can also jump in here, what he's seen over time, relying on unpublished data or outdated data, misstating the intended use or exposure level in that section of the dossier. The documentation is unclear or incomplete. And this is not related to the dossier writing, but assuming that self-affirmed GRAS eliminates any regulatory risk, right? And we're kind of starting to learn that now with some of the potential proposed changes. So just some common mistakes too.
So there are a bunch of mistakes that Andrew brought up that, they're mistakes. Okay, so let's do an evaluation between a food additive petition and a GRAS submission. The two data are, or two sets of data are equivalent. Back when I was, a baby back in the FDA, we talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you're going to submit a notice, talk about the good things that are about happening, the potential bad things, and the ugly is one of the bigger aspects that you need to evaluate. Ugly can be, well, I'm going from a microbiological perspective because that's my skill set. Yeah, some things are problematic, but they can be explained away, and that's the bad. If you could explain the bad away, you will make the chemists and the toxicologists happy. Evaluate it. Think about it. What are the bad things that might potentially happen? And then explain it. I think that's a really big thing that notifiers miss. Bad is not bad. Bad is explicable, but bad needs to be explained. Okay, again, stop talking.
That's great. That's the good, the bad, the ugly.
Right,
Keep that
exactly.
in mind.
And I want to reiterate that.
Yeah.
Think about the good, the bad, the ugly. And I know that's kind of trite, but anyway.
Yeah. Okay, good. So let's so considerations for your GRAS notice before you submit it. As you may know, there is a public list on the GRN inventory. You can Google GRAS notice inventory. You can see all the historical data. You can see the PDFs of the GRAS notice that was the dossier that was submitted. You can see the questions that the FDA asked, and yeah, that's all public for you to review. And it will, once it gets submitted to the FDA, it is going to be listed publicly, right? Regardless of the outcome, it's not getting erased. There is no, removing of it. So that's number one. FDA may accept the conclusion, disagree with it, acknowledge a withdrawal before response. And what's interesting, actually, I was recently at a trade show, and I heard this a couple of times where, companies submitted many times to FDA, and this time it was a little different in that they submitted it, and shortly after they had submitted it, they didn't tell me the exact time frame, but the FDA actually asked them to withdraw it, and they said after withdrawal they would explain to them why they were withdrawing it. Why they asked that submitter to withdraw it, as opposed to reviewing it, providing feedback on amendments, and then having them fix those amendments, and then resubmit it to FDA and continue the journey. So, one of the hypotheses behind this is that, as you probably know, the FDA, that department, and other departments too, not just in the GRAS evaluation department, they've reduced the headcount, and because there's this proposal on the self-affirmation side of things that I'll get to in a sec, there is they're seeing an influx of dossiers, probably more than usual. And they know they won't be able to keep up with it. And so this is a way to basically, be more efficient with their time, making sure they're going to work on those dossiers that are pretty much complete, or they'll have very few or minor corrections or amendments, and basically kick out the other ones and then have them resubmit. Is that efficient? I don't know, because there's still that administrative review that would have to come through again. Maybe there'll be changes to that. I don't know, but the point is that some of those changes we're hearing it already, and it's something that we really have to have a robust application out of the gate.
Okay, I'm going to jump in for a second.
Yeah.
The pre-review layer is going to end up as a huge problem. Let's go there.
Yeah.
Because you've got a whole bunch, as you described during the trade show, you got a huge amount of data coming in and only a few number of people that can actually evaluate that data. And that initial, not even before anybody gets down to evaluating it, you got a bunch of people looking at going, is all the data there that we need? Is all the data there? And okay, I'm going to be blunt. I helped write a paper about this whole problem. And it's not good. I mean, in general, what you want to do is make sure that you have everything in line before you submit, because I'm guessing anything that isn't perfect is going to get dumped, because there are so many notices coming in. Assuming the change in self-affirmation comes through. Anyway.
Yep. Okay. There you go. In terms of a strategy tip, really start planning in advance. Like if you're a raw material supplier, don't wait for that PO to come to start preparing your dossier, because you're probably going to lose that PO, because it's going to take you a while before that dossier will be ready. Whether it's self-affirmed or not. And I'm saying this because we've been getting this a lot lately, where we talk to an ingredient supplier. They say, nah, we're not going to work on this GRAS dossier right now. We'll deal with it later. Then that later comes, and they come knocking to our door and they say, hey, we've got this big PO from a major buyer. We need to get this GRAS done. Can you get it done in the next 3 to 4 weeks? Not possible. It's going to take far more than that, and they try to push us, and we're like, we just can't do it. Go around, ask.
I hate to laugh, but I have to laugh.
It's true. I mean, and if you have gaps, even if it takes several months just from the dossier writing, like your gaps are now gonna. And if you have tox study gaps, you better tell that buyer, hey, I can't get this to you anytime soon. The other thing also,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Andrew, but I think anybody who comes into any company needs to be told where their tox gaps are. And that's why they need those tox gap assessments, but they're not coming in and asking for it. They're just saying, It's okay.
Yeah, and then learn the hard way when they submit it. The other thing too, if you are a buyer, be wary of anything of a company that says, "Hey, we have a GRAS certification," and they have some notarized by a lawyer, a one piece of paper that says our ingredient is GRAS. That paper is worth nothing. It is that's not proving GRAS. You should be asking for a dossier, 50, 100-page dossier, all the 7 sections of the dossier, if they have a self-affirmation GRAS dossier prepared, right? Obviously, if they submit to FDA, ask for their number, and that's how you can verify it. So, just some points.
And that jumps on to the point of an FDA evaluated notice versus a self-affirmation. There is no difference between the two. And I think that needs to be explicitly stated here, that if you're going to do a self-affirmation, you must include all of the bits and pieces of a notice that was submitted to the FDA, even if you don't submit it, because you need all that data. And that data it may or may not come up relevant in the future, but it might. So it's better to have it done.
Yeah. All right. The evolving GRAS landscape. So this is it's kind of almost current news, you could say. So back on March 10th of this year, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, the secretary there, RFK Jr., he directed the FDA to explore potential rulemaking to revise its substances generally regarded as safe final rule and related guidance to eliminate the self-affirmed GRAS pathway. Then in September, the FDA's Unified Regulatory Agenda, which was for spring of 2025 edition, listed a proposed rule to amend 21 CFR Parts 170 and 570 to require mandatory GRAS submissions for substances for use in human or animal foods. So this is not just limited to humans. It also is, there is an animal GRAS inventory database as well. And so this is basically signaled that a formal proposal is forthcoming.
The food people, I mean, the animal food people also have a GRAS reg. I'm going to interject. Okay. Yeah. I keep interjecting a lot of thoughts. You can change the regulation. However, the law under 21 USC 409 is is a statement. So I'm not sure how that's, I want to say that the fact that I don't think that without congressional intervention, they can change 21 USC 409. The regulation is kind of waffly here. So yeah. Anyway, I'm just throwing out thoughts because, again, it cranks me off that you can change a U.S. statutory thing without approval. Anyway.
Yeah, it's under the FD&C Act, which is
right.
Is
no,
law,
but
right?
It also goes deeper under 409, which describes what a food additive is and also what a GRAS ingredient is. And I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just throwing out thoughts. Anyway. Okay, I'll stop talking. Let's go on.
All right. Yeah, so we're all waiting for this proposed rule. I mean, the government was shut down here for the last several weeks. Just it's opened up again now. We're talking, it's November 18th, 2025, but it opened up last week or late last week, and so probably in the next month or two, we're going to see something here that'll give us a little bit more clarity. Now, there was also November 6th, earlier this month, Senator Marshall proposed a bill called the Better Food Disclosure Act. And so that's another pathway where, it's basically you would, within 2 years of enactment of this bill, that any GRAS substance already in commerce must be on the list or be under FDA review. And for any new substances, company must notify FDA 120 days before first use, and FDA would have 180 days to decide on its status. And if the FDA doesn't decide in those 180 days, then the substance is automatically listed, which, that that is a really tricky pathway, because it's almost like a hybrid of self-affirmation and a GRAS notice. And I don't know how
it actually overlaps a lot with the food contact notification.
Yes, correct. The FCN.
Yeah. So I just throw that out there because there's a big overlap there.
Yeah, good point. So just some things to really keep in mind here. I mean, really, this this illustration is really what's growing, and you have to think that that door isn't getting any bigger. It's staying the same size for now. Hopefully, there won't be any more reduction in staff there. But I think it will be a wake-up call if this proposed rule actually does come to fruition. And really, you should start, if you've got a self-affirmed GRAS, get it checked over and submit it. Get it in queue, because the queue is just getting longer and longer, further back in the line.
I'm gonna say that the descriptor you gave when we were at supply side was not a linear thing. It was more of a giant funnel of people coming into. I'm sorry. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. You got a giant funnel of people coming in that need to have either, they're either their self-affirmation or a review by the FDA, and it's not a line. It's a giant funnel of people coming in to that doorway.
Yeah. It's kind of like trying to get Taylor Swift tickets, right? That was the analogy I was giving.
Okay.
At the show. It's. I mean, you'll eventually get through the door here, but how long that'll take is anybody's guess. Now, look at EFSA. Look at Europe. EFSA obviously has they aren't going through this change. It's been a mandatory pathway, but historically, it's taken 3 to 5 years to get a final conclusion on a novel food application. That could very well be the turnaround time here in the United States. It could be 3 to 5 years, and what that typically does is it stifles innovation then, right? And that's not really what the United States is all about.
No,
right?
no, that's and I want to jump on that one again. I was having a discussion with one of my economist friends about innovation, stifling innovation, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this can be concluded that by minimizing the ability of food innovators to, maybe too many, food innovators to innovate food, we're sucking down exactly what you said, which is innovation. Yeah, I think that was not a clear statement, but okay.
No, that's exactly it. So let's jump into the fireside chat here, and yeah, just I'll ask Lane some questions, and I think some of it may be an answer already, but we'll jump right into it here. So my first question here, Lane, is when should companies start thinking about GRAS and their product development timeline, and what challenges do you see when they wait too long?
They should jump in right now. They should they shouldn't think about waiting. They should make sure that, as I mean, you described through your talk, that they have all their data and other stuff under their belt, but there really is no wait at this point, because I've done, like I said, like you said, I've been there for 26 years. My first GRAS notice was GRAS notice 14, and I was also there during 6, 7, 8, blah, etc. Every industry needs to get their ducks in a row and make sure that if, well, I'm saying if, but I really mean when, the government decides that they being industry, must come in and show a notice that is solid, which unfortunately goes back to the late 80s, because that was the whole point of what happened with the 1997 proposed rule, the 1986 final rule on GRAS. It's I don't think that it's going to change. I think it's going to get worse. So industry should get their ducks in a row, make sure that they have all the information, so that whenever, I don't know what the something is, something will happen, but it needs to, but ducks in a row is the best way. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. In your experience, what helps make communication with the FDA most effective during or after a GRAS review?
Okay, so the most efficient mechanism is a pre-submission meeting, sitting down with the group, being a chemist, toxicologist, microbiologist if necessary, and then listening to the questions that group asks and responding to those questions. If industry can respond to those questions, you will have a better path forward. If you get grumbly about it and don't want to answer them, you're going to have a poor future path. But the best way is to listen to what the questions that the reviewers are asking. So when you submit your notice, you've hopefully answered those questions, which will, okay, I'm going to be blunt. You won't answer all the questions, because reviewers are always going to have new questions, but you're on a better pathway.
Okay, great. And then let me ask you one last question here, is beyond having the right data, what makes a GRAS dossier well organized and transparent from a reviewer's point of view? From your point of view, which you've seen,
Okay,
past.
that's a excellent question. Okay, the most important thing you have to look at is what are what's what I'm looking for. You have important information, you have less important information, and you have non-important information or conformatory things. The publications are with a GRAS notice are if you have an endpoint that is an absolute, you should have published. If you are just giving additional information, you can keep that in your own mind. You can keep that in your own data set. It doesn't matter if it's published. Most importantly, if you have data that is part of your endpoint, you have to have that published. The rest of the stuff is kind of whiffly, and it's not really sure how to.
Kind of primary and kind of secondary data, right?
Primary data should be published. The secondary data you could have and say, we did this study and we got this endpoint and we're good with that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that was good. All right, so I think we should open it up for Q&A for those here. So question here, is there a way to build Section 3 background exposure without the NHANES database? Can you use intake data of similar compounds to build this section?
Okay, I'm not sure I understand. Okay, you're looking at NHANES data. What do you mean by secondary data?
Yeah, can you use intake data of similar compounds, for example? Okay.
Yeah, no. If you can bridge the gap, yes. But the important point about you have one layer of data and you must bridge that delta between what you're talking about, what you want to talk about. Yeah, it's basically a bridging thing. And that's it's a bridge.
It's a bridge. All right.
It's a bridge. It's a bridge that you must make because the chemists and the toxicologist will ask you how that bridge was made.
Okay.
Is that good? I mean,
well, I think that's a good answer, and it's a rationale to build that bridge.
Mm-hmm. No, just bridge. You're talking about compound X. You want to go to compound Y. How can you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I keep using the word bridge.
I think they probably got it. Okay. Next question here is: are Sunrise a good source of material for research? Well, can't really, suggest any specific companies. Sunrise, I don't know what your thoughts. I mean, Sunrise Botanics, like, again, we can't, we're here to advise in terms of data that would be sufficient. We obviously haven't reviewed any of Sunrise Botanics, materials or anything of that nature, but I mean, I think that's where we kind of leave it. That question.
No, I'm gonna jump on what Andrew's saying is that individual companies are not something that we can espouse.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, if you see what happens to EFSA, that's probably accurate. Yep.
No, I have nothing to say to that because other than yes.
Because I don't see them hiring a lot of people until it really, I don't know if even like the slowness or the innovation that just halts suddenly is a wake-up call, or if industry, maybe the lobbyists or potentially litigation might mix into this too, that could stir the pot. But yeah, I mean, I think EFSA is a good indication of the bottleneck over there. They did have a change. They came out with a revision to their guidance document back in February, and they've indicated it should take 90 days. I'm still waiting to see that come to fruition.
So you're not seeing that happen?
So far, no.
No, okay.
I mean, that guidance document is far more robust in Europe. We're going a little bit off topic here. That guidance document was basically far more complex in terms of upstream, what data to collect, but they also laid out different tiers to make it more clear to a submitter of, hey, if I'm this kind of ingredient, what kind of studies do I need? What data? The idea was to reduce the number of questions that would be asked downstream. I think if the FDA eliminate self-affirmed GRAS, they need to make a very robust guidance document so that the number of questions that are going to be having to asked by FDA downstream is minimized, so that
I think we had a lot of conversations about removal of self-affirmation and how that, most importantly, what kind of guidance is FDA going to actually put forth for that prospect?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't go there because I know nothing about animal food other than the food I feed my cat.
I mean, on the animal side, the CVM is really heavily involved in that. There are not many GRAS notices. If you go on that inventory list, it is pales in comparison.
No. Okay, this much I do know. Yeah, CVM's ability to push forward on GRAS notices is poor, but beyond that, I don't know much.
Yeah. So hard to say. I mean, based on the previous slide that I mentioned, you have to assume that this, the if self-affirmation goes away, it would apply to both human and animal GRAS.
No, I don't see why there would be any difference, but possibly.
Right. Like, why would they eliminate one and not the other? Right. I mean, it'd be a full swoop. So. GLP certificate is not required. They're required to follow those practices, and OECD standards are typically followed. But Lane, thoughts?
Practicate? No. Well, as far as the GRAS program goes, you need to state that you are following good lab practices. It doesn't go any deeper than that.
So that's open
and, it literally is part of your notice saying you're following good lab practices, and nothing you're doing is, it's euphemistic. You're doing the right thing. Nothing deeper than that.
Yeah.
But no certificates. Pretty much everything.
Yeah.
If you have a GRAS substance that is already, whatever, notified to FDA or self-notified, as long as you're following the endpoints of manufacturing, you're good. So I'm going to throw out an example because I was talking to Andrew about this, about ribose, which you'd think would not be that complicated, but it was. Anyway, so you're making ribose, as long as you're following specs that the GRAS notice for ribose is, you're fine. You don't actually need extra data. Go on.
So one of the things I was going to say is, someone else got a GRAS notice. They have a number on the inventory, and so you prepare yours and you say, oh, mine's just like theirs, so give me a GRAS notice. It isn't that simple. Number one is typically the information on the other one is redacted, so you don't know if yours is identical to theirs. You could reference. You could say, hey, there's say Lactobacillus acidophilus. Hey, there are 5 other GRAS notices that have been prepared, and here's the references of those. But that's not yours, obviously. That's not your material. You have to prove your own worth for your own substance, right? You can't just blanket say, hey, mine's just like yours. That's also a legal risk that you put yourself into. How you can't, saying yours is just like the other, puts you kind of in that light too, right? You just have to think about that. So really it's about,
but you're delving into legal liability, which is legitimately a concern. So be comfortable if your product is the same. If you're uncomfortable, you might have a problem. That's my thought.
Yeah. Are you an apples to apples, or are you an apples to pear comparison? You kind of have to, that's where that risk comes into play. So
no, it's and that is where the industry must decide whether or not they're in a good place, or talk to the FDA, which admittedly right now might not be the fastest way to go, but they need to understand the legal endpoints.
Perfect. Good. Well, I think we're pretty much out of time. I would like to thank everybody for attending this webinar. If you've got questions, or you're seeking help and guidance going down this GRAS pathway, here at Quality Smart Solutions, happy to assist you. And Lane also assists us here in various aspects in terms of QA checking GRAS dossiers, and also has acted as an expert panel member too. So we're here to serve you, and thank you again for joining. And
I'm gonna just make a point that you managed to boink it out at like 2.00.
We just did it right on time. Yeah.
Anyway, no, it's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you presenting this.
Thank you, Lane, and thank you for your participation in this and your insight. Very valuable for everyone who attended this
Okay.
session.
Okay. Yeah,
Thanks again,
everybody have
everyone.
a great day.
Take care.
Good night or good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Or good evening.